Once upon a time, a curious young boy turned to his father and asked, "Dad, how big is God?" His father, with a warm smile, replied, "How big do you think God is?" The child with a grin said, "Daddy, is he bigger than the elephant?" The father, seeing an airplane in the sky, asked his son, "Boy, how big is that airplane?" The son responded, "Dad, it's very small." The father nodded approvingly and decided to illustrate his point. They then headed to the airport, and the father took his son very close to one airplane and asked again, "Son, how big is this airplane?" The son, now excited, exclaimed, "Very big, Dad, very, very big." The father imparted a valuable lesson, saying, God's size depends on how close you are to Him. If you're far off, He seems very small. But if you're close, He's very big. The father continued, "My son, the name of God is I Am. God is who you think He is. If you believe God to be a provider, then He will be your provider. If you think He is a healer, then He will be your healer. If you think He's a comforter, then He will grant you peace and comfort. However, if you believe God doesn't keep His promises, your prayers may go unanswered. He's who you think He is." So you child of God, what perspective of God do you hold and believe? Do you see Him as a tiny figure in the distance, almost out of reach? Or do you feel His comforting presence, so near that He appears vast and encompassing? Your perception and faith in God greatly determines how you experience Him in your life. Just like the child in our story learned, your closeness to God will ultimately decide how large His influence and presence will be in your life. In the scriptures, we are introduced to a woman who had been suffering from an issue of blood for 12 long years. Even though she had consulted with numerous physicians and spent all she had, she never got better. But this woman held a belief. She believed if she could but touch the garment of Jesus, she would be made whole. Despite her weakness and the crowds that surrounded Him, she pushed her way through, determined to touch the Master. Jesus, immediately feeling power drained from Him, turned around to find the faith-filled woman. Because she dared to draw close to Him and hold on to the unwavering belief that Jesus could heal her, she received her healing. To her, Jesus was not just a preacher or a prophet. He was her healer. The lesson here is, how we view God affects the kind of miracles we receive from Him. If you are desperate and ready to believe, no matter how difficult your situation may seem, God will prove Himself to be exactly what you need. Thus, the story of the woman with the issue of blood calls us to examine our faith and proximity to God. We ought to trust and seek Him relentlessly, believing that He is ever present, infinitely capable, and will fulfill our needs according to our faith in Him. The God of our perception is the God we experience in our lives. Do you believe that He is big enough to fulfill His promises to you? Is He a healer to you? Is He a comforter, provider, and a miracle worker in your life? Remember, the closer you are to God, the bigger He appears. So draw close, and He will draw close to you. So my question to you is this: who is God to you? And how do you see Him? Share your thoughts in the comments section below.